Now that it's the new year, 2016, my kids are back in school, except my college girl who's still in Florida in swim training. So I think she flies back to her college this weekend. But other than that, the rest of us get to have normal lives again, or, what seems like normal lives. I did want to share a little bit about 2016 in general. My husband and I were home alone. The kids were off at their own places, and he was trying to stay awake, but not doing such a very good job. And so I put on Facebook, that I would answer, the question of what does 2016 want of me? And I got quite a few responses, over 70 responses, and, started answering people. And, giving them a picture of what 2016 wanted of them. And it was interesting because I saw some very common themes. And one of which was this idea of taking care of ourselves. Now, a couple of shows back, I did mention something about, our identity and how I'm a Libra, and I said I thought I was an ENFJ. What I meant to say was INFJ. Even though I can speak to people and connect with people and can enjoy the social company of others, I really have very much an introverted nature, in that I get recharged and restored when I have my own space, when I have my own time away from, including my family, right? To have that, okay, they're all off at school and now I get to just sit and be. The other theme that was common for people was this idea of focus, that it's as if there are so many choices out there, and 2016 is almost representative of that there are so many choices out there. If you think of even, who's running for president, there are so many choices out there. How many, television shows you can watch. I don't have a TV, but nonetheless, how many choices there are. How many, if you look at the food even, how many choices of, whatever it is, there are lots of choices. They never just give you one, which is nice. But there is this sense of sometimes feeling overwhelmed and not knowing what to decide. So what was interesting is a common theme for many of the people that I was giving a quick read for was focus. Focus on what you really want. Which brings us to another one, which was joy. Joy was another common theme, which was to let go of our preconceived ideas and our practicality, and start moving toward joy. Now, that's not to say we want to throw, our practical nature to the wind and say, oh, whatever, but to really start to set aside that which has kept us sort of caged in with practicality and, have-tos, and start moving toward this this heart's, calling to say, what is it that you want? This came up for me. It's like, what is it that I want? So what I did at the beginning of the year is I created a list. And generally speaking, I have a monthly budget in which I have all of our expenses, and we are like literally at a shoestring. We do everything very minimally because that's really all we have, right? And so I make sure, every couple of days that we're right on track and that nothing's going to go through the bank before we get to the bank and all of that type of stuff. And one of the things I thought was, I'm tired of living in this sort of like, it's so tricky kind of way. And instead to say, what would I want? Rather than figuring out ways to conserve and save and, which we never have savings, but in terms of, how do we cut back? How do we, have less? I really wanted to figure out, how can I experience more? And I don't mean to sound in a greedy kind of way. I'm just saying in a sense of, what would I really like? And what would I like to have in my life that would make my life more joyful, more fulfilling? And for me, it's releasing that whole sense of financial struggle. I mean, I'm 49, and we've lived this way basically the whole time I've been an adult, my husband and I, and it's exhausting. So I made a list, and it was sort of a budget of, what would I like my expenses to be? We don't have health insurance. I know I'm supposed to, according to, the new law, but my kids and my husband, fortunately, are covered through Indian Health Services. It's not quite insurance, but at least it counts as that. And whereas I haven't seen a doctor in who knows how long. So one of the things on the list was, health insurance. But not only that, because I don't usually use, traditional or conventional medicine, I put on there, holistic health, treatment, so that I could go to the chiropractor. I could go to, cranial sacral if I wanted. I could utilize these other holistic means if I wanted to for my well-being. I listed a car payment, with my daughter having gotten into an accident. I ended up getting, a little bit of money from my totaled vehicle. But it was just enough to put towards another hunk. And I like my new car. I really am happy with it. But it's old. It's a 2003 and it has over 100,000 miles. And so that's all I could afford, right? I didn't have savings. It was just like, okay, let's bring this to this. So wouldn't it be nice to have a car payment, or better yet, a paid off car that's a newer vehicle that I don't have to worry about? I put on there this idea of how much groceries I would like to actually have in the house, right? So putting down, how much money I would love to spend at the grocery store, and at a grocery store I'd like to shop at, versus one that's like, okay, how do we, save, and where's the cheapest place, and, where do we cut? So what I see is that 2016 is offering us all opportunities to set aside practicality, if that's our nature, and start moving toward joy. It offers us a chance to look at all of our choices and start to focus on that which we want. And it's very important, so that we sustain ourselves and continue to grow in very positive ways and healthy ways, that we focus on our own self-care and taking care of ourselves. So some things that come up for me each time I record more of the episodes are a couple of things. The first being, what is it that I'm going to talk about this week? What's going to come up? And generally speaking, I just allow myself to feel into what maybe spirit is guiding me to bring, right? And I often hate that kind of a term, because it sounds so etheric, but whatever. But this is generally how I work. And I don't have a plan. I don't have A through Z, here's what you do to get to some kind of end result. My intention was to do a reality show in which I show up each week and create a model for being in the world that works for me, or in some cases that doesn't work for me, so that we can kind of, muddle through this together in some respects, but with the intention of raising our own frequency and moving that frequency, that solid sense of high frequency love vibration into the world, right? And by sharing with you about my finances the other day, it's like, well, how is that related? That's kind of, strange. But what I see is that, for one thing, whenever we have an area in our lives that is blocked energetically for whatever reason, whether it's, good health, whether it's income, whether it's relationship, if it doesn't bring us joy, if it blocks us and makes us tighten up, then that in and of itself shifts our vibration, and it brings it to a place of a lower density, because we're not resonating with joy, we're not resonating with happiness. When it is infused with some sense of shame that, we've done something wrong, or we feel bad about ourselves in some way, that's even more dense. So as we come really clear with what we want, with what our visions are for this year, for our lives, we are going to be faced with our dark side, our shadow. And that shadow doesn't mean like, oh, because I don't make money, that's something dark or bad. It's how I feel about it. And if it makes me feel miserable to be struggling financially, or if it makes me feel shameful that I'm not making what other people make, then that is something for me to be with and to share. And in doing so, my intention is to continue to offer up to you as a viewer that experience of and demonstration of courage, of really coming into who I am in an authentic way, but also to continue to relieve myself of these burdens of shame, of guilt, of yuck, because what my intention is to really open up to more joy, more love, more abundance, not just financially, but in terms of every area of my life, right? Why not? That's what we're here to experience if we allow ourselves. Anyway, I wanted just to touch base with you about this sense of sharing my truth, but what really came up for me as I did so, and what might be coming up for you as you look at your things. And what I would like to do is maybe you can look at some area of tightness, and maybe you can decide what you are courageous enough to share. You know, it doesn't have to be with me, but it could be with someone close to you. That's something that's important to you that you feel like you need to share so that it can start to move that energy. Just a thought. What I want to leave you with is the question, you know, what does 2016 want of you? To contemplate that in some way, rather than looking at it as an opportunity to get what we want or to create the life that we want. Ask, you know, what is it wanting of me? Does it want you to face your fears? Does it want you to have some kind of focus in which you decide something? Is it wanting you to spend more time taking care of your basic fundamental needs? For me, it is really asking me to rise up in courage to experience that lack within me, whether it's financial, which of course is really an external symptom of what's going on, but that feeling of shame and worthlessness and that feeling of emptiness or lack in my life, right? What is that? And it's not about fixing, again, processing anything that, you know, that needs to be fixed in my life, but more or less really looking at it as an opportunity to come forward with my true self, with my truth, which is I am so abundant, you know, that we are so abundant as beings, that we are ultimately living into each new moment with perfect health, right? Or that we have every relationship that we need in our lives right now, whatever the areas of our feelings of lack, you know, show up for us, to really look at it from a totally different perspective, and to allow 2016 to challenge you in ways that you can rise to your true self.